Today we'll discuss about database system environment. All right, database system environment is the topic that we are going to discuss today. As we have earlier mentioned in the previous classes, database management system is a complex software. It is a complex software. It is not about a simple singular software, but it is a complex combination or collection of software. So while we are trying to understand what is the database system environment, we will discuss the following, like component modules, system utilities, tools, application environments, and communication facilities. So the system environment will be divided into these three broad categories. Under these broad categories, we will discuss what is database system environment. Now, in order to understand the system environment, I have given this chart. This diagram, which is taken from Fundamentals of Database System by Elmelsri and Nawad, the recommended textbook for this particular course. So if you look at these pretty complex component modules, there are so many things in it, but it is not something where it is so complex that it doesn't make sense. It's not something like that. Rather, these help us to understand how the various components or various modules are there in a database system. So one of the important component modules or the modules, see, when we say module, usually if you have a program, if this is a computer program, it will be divided into different modules. The whole computer program will have module 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and so on. So a module is simply one part of the system. Now, in these component modules, one of the most important component is the store data manager. Okay, this is store data manager. This particularly controls. Okay, or in some, have a control over how the disk is accessed. Usually, what happens is that when you want to access the disk, that is the storage space, when you want to access that access will be controlled by the operating system. So what these store data manager do is like assisting, or it is part of that accessing the disk. It assists in accessing the disk. So the store data manager control access to the database information which is stored in the disk, which can be that database information. We have a database system or database schema, or how database is designed and how it has to be accessed, and all of those things combined together, we call it database information. So this information is usually stored in a disk, in the computer disk. So this information may be stored as part of the database, or it may be stored separately as a database catalog. So you have two options: as part of the database system, or it may be stored as a catalog. Okay, in either way, the information itself, database management, DBMS information itself, is also a database. Okay, so store data manager will use the service provided by the operating system. What type of service is provided by the operating system? Control. It has control to access the disk. Okay, to access the disk. So that service is used by the store data manager to carry out low level, what? Low level data transfer between the disk and the main storage. Sometimes we call it the buffers. Okay. Whenever you want to perform something and use something which is stored in the system, the operating system will take portion of that particular, the part that you want to use, and put it in a buffer. Once it is in a buffer, then whatever you have to do, modify, use it, run it, execute it, all of those things is done. That is how a computer system works. So the stored data manager takes the use the service of the operating system and transfer from the disk. You have information stored in the disk and brings it to the main storage system. So what it does is it handles the buffers in the main memory. That is particularly the job of the stored data manager. So once data is in the main memory buffers, it can be processed by the other modules and application. That means you can have access only when access to the database which is stored in the disk, only when it is kept, data is kept in the main memory buffers. So some database management systems have buffer manager modules. Okay, some have this separate, their own inbuilt buffer manager module, while in most cases the DBMS software simply use the service of the operating system. All right. So now, as you can see, that what the stored data manager does is that it is taking control of this, control of A, B, C, and then D here, then E here. All of this, it is having some control. Okay. So as we discussed, we'll keep coming back to the stored data manager. Now let us come to the DDL compiler. So DDL, as we have defined in the previous class, is the data definition language. Now usually what happens is that a database administrator, a staff or administrator, will write a program or will use a DDL language, data definition language, which are data definition, collection of data definition statements, and which will be compiled by the DDL compiler. So it processes the schema definition, stores it in the DBMS catalog. So what it does is that when data definition language, like so many things, for example, here we have data in data definition language. What we do is that name of the file, size of the file, name and name of the data or data types of the data items, storage details of the files, mapping information between the schemas, constraints, all of these things, how a data will look like, how the data is conceptualized and how it is designed. All of those things is written, as we said in the previous class, in data definition language, which the DDL compiler ultimately executes it. So all of those information is stored by DDL compiler in the catalog, okay, in the system catalog or database system catalog. So other types of information are also stored here. Okay. Then we have a runtime data processor. Now, runtime data processor here is right here in the middle. Runtime runtime data processor handles database at runtime. That is, while it is being executed, it handles the data. So basically, it receives retrieval or update operations and perform it on the database. Whenever a user is asking for some kind of retrieval or update operation on the data. Okay, some changes, or or the user wants to see some information from the data, then this is what the runtime data processors do. Okay, then you have the query compiler. So here it is. The query compiler, it handles high-level queries. For example, from the users, you have a query coming through using some query language. The user will have some query, and usually these query compilers are in the query language, which is parsed by the query compiler, analyze, compile, or interpret a query by creating data access code. Then it calls the runtime data processor. This query compiler calls the runtime, here it is, runtime data processor to execute the code. Once the query is converted into database access code, okay, then it takes the help of the runtime data processor for execution of the codes. Okay, because the execution is done by the runtime data processor. Then we have precompiler. Now, what does a precompiler do? The precompiler, it extracts data manipulation language commands. Okay, it extracts data manipulation language command from an application program. Okay, so that is what the precompiler do. So what happens is that database is not just about querying, designing, writing, and then managing. This is about designing and writing. This is about managing, and then this is about querying, trying to get information out of it. It is also accessed by application program. That is, some other computer programs also may use the database system. That is where the precompiler comes in. So what the precompiler do is that since it handles the database access by other application programs or other computer programs, it extracts data manipulation language command from application programs. So when an application program tries to access the database system, it extracts the DML statements from the application program. That is what the precompiler do. Then the commands are sent to this DML compiler for compilation into object code. Okay, object code. Then the rest of the program is sent to the host compiler. The rest of the program is sent to the host compiler. Then the object code and the rest of the program are linked into a chain transaction. Okay, chain transactions. Then the executable code of this transaction, ultimately you will have an executable code out of this transaction. You have a precompiler which accepts DML statements, and DML statement is kept in the, taken by the DML compiler, and then the rest of the program is in the host language compiler, and these two together is kept in the chain compile transaction, which comes out with a code, executable code, which is ultimately executed through what? Through the runtime data database processor. Okay. Then now that is what these component modules are about in a nutshell. So you may have that client program that accesses the database system, the VMS, running on a separate computer. For example, you may have client programs, for example, through a client computer, okay, and then accessing the database in a database server. In some cases, the client accesses a middle computer called application server, which in turn access the database server, and so on. Okay, so this figure that, I mean, example taken from fundamentals of database system is meant to describe a specific DBMS. Rather, it illustrates typical, and I mean, this does not describe specific database. It is a general purpose or a typical DBMS module, which means that all of these things may be found in a database system, or it may not be found also. So that is, in a nutshell, the component modules of a database system, of database environment. Now, coming to the database system utilities. So in addition to processing the software modules that we have just described, most DBMS have database utilities also. These utilities usually help the administrator in managing the database system. So there are so many, I mean, there are quite a few of them, but we will pick up some of those prominent ones. One is the loading. This utility is used to load existing data files. For example, that data files may be a text file or a sequential file. So what it does is that the existing format of the data files, there will be the source format and the target database structure. So we have an existing database format, and then that database format will ultimately be loaded into the database system in the target database structure. Okay, so what this utility do is that it automatically reformats the data and stored in the database. So this is one of the very important things in terms of data compatibility, that you want to put something, I mean, convert something into the target your database structure. This is done through this loading utility, and there are other products as well which generate appropriate loading process, given that the existing format may be different and the target format may be different. So they are also these tools are also sometimes called conversion tools. Okay, conversion tools. At one point of time, these conversion tools were very popular because database normally change. For example, you are using the first generation DBMS. Then comes the second generation DBMS. Then comes the third generation, and so on. So what happens is that you already have n number of data in this first generation DBMS, but with a proper conversion tool, you don't have to re-enter everything. I mean, and suppose you want to advance to the second generation DBMS, which must be better than the first generation. So you need a conversion tool from here to the new database system. In other words, also, I mean, in another example would be that you have X database system. You have been using X database system. Later on, you realize that you want to use Y system, because Y system have some advantage over X system. So you have to load your data, which is already in X system, into Y system. So what will happen is that you need a conversion tool. Unless X and Y database, both of these two, have the same format or the same structure, in most cases, which it is not true, then you need an appropriate conversion tool. So this is what the conversion tools are useful for. Then other utilities, like you have backup. This utility creates a backup copy of the database system. For example, this is your database system. The backup can copy all of these things, or it can simply, suppose you have this much data, then then tomorrow you add some more. So incrementally, it can be the entire database. The backup can be done as an entire database, or it can be done incrementally. That means every day you make some changes, that changes will be reflected incrementally. So this is how backup is done. The backup utility can be backup entirely in the entirety of the database or incrementally. Then you have utilities like file organization. It is used to reorganize a database into different file organization. For what purpose? In order to improve the performance. Okay. Then you have the system utilities like performance monitoring. So what it does is this performance monitoring monitors database usage, like how many users are there, and then what type of data is used, and so on. Then it provides information in the form of statistics. So basically, it monitors how the users are using the database, and then give you some statistics. That way, based on the report in the form of statistics, you can improve upon how your improve your database system. And there are other utilities like sorting files, data compression, for example. Sometimes, particularly with image file and audio files and all, you need a lot of this data compression. You can have a utility for that. Then monitoring users' access or users' activities. What type of which part of the database system the users are accessing more, and which part is unused, and so on. Then also interfacing between interfacing with the network are some of the other utilities that you will find, which is used in the database system environment. Then coming to the tools, application, environment, and communication facilities. So one important tools is called case tools. That is, case tool, the full form is computer-aided software engineering. Sometimes they call it computer-aided system engineering also. So these are case tools, which is basically used to design the database system. So using a computer software called a case, in short, computer-aided software engineering, which is a computer software itself, you are designing a software like the database system. So this is one tools which is useful. And then you have things like data dictionary or data repository, which is used to store information about the schemas, constraints that we have already mentioned. And it is also used to store design decisions. Okay, why you are not using why you are using X design instead of Y design, and so on. This kind of decision. Then usage standards, application program descriptions, and user information can be stored in this data dictionary or data repository, which is very useful. Then you have application development environments. This is an environment for developing database applications, which we mentioned in the earlier part, which will be used to access the database system. And then facilities including database design, development of graphical user interface, querying and updating. Okay, to this is what application development environment help you to perform. Then one very important thing is the communication software. This allows user at a remote, a location which is remote from the database system side to access the database through, they may access through terminals, workstations, or local, their own personal computers. So these devices which access the database from remote areas, in the sense that from far off places, these devices are connected to the database through, it may be through phone lines, through wide area network, or it may be through local area network, or through communication, satellite communication devices, and so on. So you have this communication software which help you to establish a connection through remote access. So with this, we have come to the end of today's class. Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you,